The world outside the prison walls continued to move with careless indifference. Sunlight on the ocean, new homes being built, lives beginning again. But for Luna Nozawa, time had long ago stopped. In her small concrete cell, the air was always heavy with regret and delusion, saturated with the echo of her own breathing. Her world had narrowed to the rhythm of footsteps in the corridor, the metallic click of locks, and the sound of her own voice whispering to a photograph taped to the wall. The photo, faded and crumpled, was of Will Spencer. To anyone else, it was a remnant of a scandal that had destroyed reputations. To Luna, it was the only living connection she still recognized. She would sit for hours, talking to him in the half-light. Her tone shifted between tenderness and fury, confession and accusation. She asked him if he remembered the night everything changed, the night she crossed every boundary of human decency, the night she took from him something that could never be returned. But in her fractured mind, that night was rewritten again and again until she was no longer the aggressor, but the victim. "They don't understand us," she would whisper to the photograph. "They call it violence, but it was love. You said you loved me once, didn't you?" Her voice trembled with a softness that didn't belong in a place built for monsters. Luna Nozawa had killed before. Tom Starr and Hollis had died quickly, one strangled with the strap of a bag, the other with a precision that came from adrenaline and blind rage. Those deaths had turned her into a myth among inmates, a whisper in the dark hallways about the beautiful girl with the haunted eyes who smiled after she killed. And yet, in her own mind, she wasn't a killer. She was misunderstood, punished for loving too deeply. It was this delusion that gave her strength, the certainty that if she could just get out, she could make Will understand. The morning everything began, she woke to the sound of laughter echoing down the hall. Someone had smuggled a phone into the block, and a few prisoners were gathered, passing it from hand to hand. "New digs," one of them said, reading from the screen. The word meant nothing to Luna until she caught a glimpse of the photo. Will Spencer, standing beside Electra Forrester, smiling in front of a gleaming beach house, the ocean shining behind them like glass. In that instant, something inside her fractured. The blood drained from her face, and her fingers tightened around the bars. That beach house. That cursed, blood-soaked house. The same one where Liam Spencer and Sheila Carter had fallen. The same one where the air still smelled faintly of salt and gunpowder. She remembered the tiles slick with blood, the screams, the echo of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. That house was a graveyard of her sins, and now Will had brought another woman into it. Her stomach churned with nausea and fury. Electra's face on the screen, radiant, untouched, was unbearable. Luna felt something primal surge through her. The room seemed to tilt, the walls breathing in and out like a living thing. "He forgot me," she muttered. "He's pretending I never existed." Then louder, "You can't erase me, Will. You can't." That was when she saw it, the ordinary miracle, the sign she had been waiting for. A laundry cart rattled past her cell door, pushed by an inmate on cleaning duty. Its wheels squeaked rhythmically, like a lullaby from another world. The sight of it made her pulse quicken. It was absurd and yet perfect. The universe, she thought, was speaking to her. Freedom wasn't about force, it was about opportunity. And the opportunity had just rolled by. That night, Luna sat awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, whispering to her unborn child. She imagined the baby's heartbeat inside her, the tiny pulse that linked her to Will forever. "You see," she whispered, pressing her palm against her belly. "He can't escape us. You are proof that he loves me. When we get out, he'll understand." In the shadows, her smile was a blade of madness. By dawn, her plan had crystallized. The laundry cart would pass again at 5:40 a.m., just as the guard took his smoke break outside the south exit. She had watched the pattern for weeks, the same routine, the same lazy timing. The guard would open the inner gate, step outside, and leave it ajar for air. All she needed was 60 seconds of invisibility. She rehearsed every motion in her mind, crouch low, hold her breath, hide beneath the sheets. Freedom was not a fantasy anymore, it was a countdown. When the time came, the moment felt almost holy. The hum of fluorescent lights, the clang of keys, the mechanical groan of the gate, all of it merged into a single heartbeat. Luna slipped under the linen, the scent of bleach filling her lungs. The cart moved, jolting slightly as it passed through the checkpoint. Her body trembled, every nerve alive. She could hear the guard muttering to himself, the click of his lighter. The sound of the outer door creaking open was the sweetest music she had ever heard. And then air. A cold, fresh, limitless air. She was out. No alarms, no shouts. The universe had looked away for one brief moment, and she had stepped through the gap. By the time the sirens screamed hours later, Luna was already miles away, her hair tangled by the wind, her eyes fever-bright. She had stolen a maintenance truck and was driving west, toward the ocean, toward the place where everything had begun and where, in her mind, it would all be made right again. The city unfolded around her like a mirage, neon, water, endless sky. She felt invincible, guided by destiny itself. Meanwhile, Will Spencer had no idea that the ghost of his past was on her way. He stood on the deck of his new home with Electra, the sea breeze brushing through her hair. For the first time in months, he felt at peace. Electra had brought light back into his life after Luna's darkness, helping him rebuild what had been broken. Together, they had painted the house, redecorated the rooms, and tried to make the place forget its bloody history. They joked about the creaks in the floorboards and the sound of the waves that sometimes felt too loud. Will told himself the house was just a house now, no more ghosts, no more nightmares. But the ocean always remembers. As night fell, Luna parked the truck at the edge of the cliffs, the surf roaring below. The house glowed in the distance, its windows spilling warm light onto the sand. Through the glass, she saw them, Will and Electra, sitting close together, laughing over a bottle of wine. The sight ignited something feral in her. Her fingers dug into the sand, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. The voice in her head, calm, familiar, began to whisper. She's taken your place. She's stolen your life. You can't let her win. Luna moved through the night like smoke, silent and certain. She knew every inch of that house, the back entrance, the unlocked window, the sound the floor made near the stairs. Inside, she could smell the faint trace of her own past lingering beneath the new paint and candles. Her heart beat faster with every step. Upstairs, she could hear laughter, then footsteps, then silence. There were a dozen ways this could go. In one version of the story, Luna burst into the room, screaming, weapon in hand, her face a mask of betrayal. In another, she crept closer, watching them sleep, her mind unraveling with every breath. But the reality was worse than either fantasy. Luna stood at the foot of the bed, staring down at Will and Electra tangled in each other's arms. The moonlight fell across their faces, and something inside her snapped. In her mind, it wasn't murder, it was justice. It was reclamation. Electra wasn't a person, she was an obstacle. The knife from the kitchen gleamed faintly in her hand. The rest was a blur of movement and sound. Electra's gasp, Will's shout, the struggle, the chaos. When it was over, the room was still. The only sound was the ocean outside and Luna's ragged breathing. But then another voice whispered, the cunning, survivalist part of her that had learned to adapt. They'll blame you, it said, unless you make them believe something else. And so she began to stage it. The broken lamp, the overturned chair, the angle of the wound, all carefully arranged. Will's fingerprints were everywhere, his DNA woven into every surface. Luna smeared his blood from an old cut on his arm across the knife handle. By the time she was done, the scene looked like a crime of passion. Will Spencer, lover turned killer. It was perfect. Then she vanished. When morning came, the house was silent. The front door hung open, and the breeze carried the smell of salt and copper. Bill and Katie arrived with a bottle of champagne and bright smiles, ready to celebrate their son's new beginning. But the moment they stepped inside, the world ended. The bottle fell from Katie's hand, shattering on the tile. Electra's body lay motionless on the floor, a smear of crimson beneath her. Bill's voice broke into a hoarse, animal sound. Katie collapsed beside him, whispering no, 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 over and over as if denial could reverse time. Police cars came, then reporters, then the endless flash of cameras. Will was nowhere to be found. His phone was discovered in the sand outside, his car still in the driveway. The evidence screamed guilt. Bill's mind refused to accept it, but the facts were merciless. His son, the boy he had sworn to protect, was now the prime suspect in a murder he didn't commit. Somewhere out there, Luna watched the chaos unfold on a stolen phone. She smiled faintly as she read the headlines, Will Spencer questioned in beach house killing. In her warped sense of justice, it felt poetic. He had abandoned her, denied their love, and now the world would make him pay. Yet beneath the satisfaction, something darker stirred, an ache she couldn't name. She missed him. Even now, after everything. It wasn't long before she decided to return. Not as a fugitive, but as a savior. She would rescue him, offer comfort, pretend to be the only one who understood him. She imagined finding him broken, desperate, grateful. In her mind, it would be the beginning of their real family. But Luna's fantasies were already collapsing under the weight of reality. Will wasn't running. He was hiding, shattered, consumed by guilt and horror. When he finally emerged, it was into a world that saw him as a killer. The police questioned him for hours. He tried to speak, but his words faltered under the weight of evidence he couldn't explain. The truth, that Luna was alive and free, was too unbelievable for anyone to hear. Meanwhile, Bill and Katie's relationship cracked under grief. Katie could barely speak without trembling. Bill, consumed by rage, vowed to find Luna himself. He hired private investigators, scoured the coast, turned every whisper into a lead. I gave her another chance, he muttered, voice thick with guilt. I believed she could change. And now my son is paying for it. When Luna finally made contact, it wasn't with Will but with Katie. A letter, handwritten and unsigned, arrived one morning. He's innocent, it read. He loves me. He'll understand soon. Katie's hands shook as she read it. She knew then that Luna wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The days that followed became a nightmare, without end. Will was released on bail but haunted by flashes of that night. Blood, screams, the look in Luna's eyes. He barely slept, barely spoke. Sometimes, late at night, he swore he could hear her voice outside the window, whispering his name. And maybe he could. Because Luna Nozawa, the woman who had already escaped death and justice once, was still out there, pregnant, dangerous, and more convinced than ever that she was fighting for love. The baby growing inside her was her weapon, her proof, her leverage. She told herself that once Will saw their child, everything would make sense again. He would forgive her, love her, protect her. She believed this with the certainty of the truly delusional. But the truth was far simpler and far more tragic. Luna wasn't in love. She was lost, trapped in a story of her own making, chasing a version of happiness that never existed. Her violence wasn't born from hatred, but from the unbearable fear of being forgotten. And so the legend of Luna Nozawa continued, a woman who mistook obsession for love, who turned affection into a weapon, and who couldn't tell the difference between freedom and madness. Somewhere, in the quiet of night, the waves crashed against the shore outside the beach house, washing away the blood but not the memory. Because in the world of the bold and the beautiful, ghosts never stay buried. They return, dressed in silk and shadows, whispering promises, carrying the scent of danger. And as long as Luna Nozawa still breathed, no one in the Spencer or Forrester families would ever truly be safe again. The soft beeping of hospital monitors had long since become a rhythm in Katie Logan's life, a quiet reminder that even the strongest hearts could falter. She used to think strength meant surviving heartbreak, that resilience was measured by how many times you could rebuild after love fell apart. But now, lying in her room at the hospital with the California sunlight spilling across her face, she understood that real strength was far quieter. It was the way her chest tightened and released with every breath, the way she could still smile when Bill Spencer entered the room pretending he wasn't worried. And it was the way she looked at her son Will and whispered to herself that he was her miracle, the one thing that had kept her heart beating through every loss and betrayal life had thrown her way. For Katie, Will wasn't just her child. He was the proof that her body, fragile as it was, could still create something pure. Every time she saw him smile, she felt something inside her ease, even as her doctors warned her that her heart, scarred and weary, would never fully recover. In recent weeks, the pain had returned with a new sharpness, creeping up behind her ribs, leaving her breathless in moments of laughter. She tried to hide it. She told Bill it was nothing, that she just needed rest. But Bill could see it in her eyes, the exhaustion, the strain. He had been by her side long enough to recognize when Katie was pretending to be strong for everyone else. Across town, Luna Nozawa sat alone in her prison cell, her belly swollen with the child she had never deserved to carry. Her reflection in the metal mirror was unrecognizable, eyes sunken, hair matted, skin pale beneath the flickering fluorescent light. But behind those haunted eyes was something darker than regret. Luna was not consumed by guilt. She was consumed by obsession. Every thought, every breath was still anchored to Will Spencer, the man she had violated, manipulated, and claimed as her own. Even now, behind bars, she spoke of him like a savior. "He loves me," she murmured to herself. "He just doesn't know it yet. They poisoned him against me." Her voice trembled with conviction, the kind that only madness could sustain. The guards had learned to ignore her. They had seen worse. Women who prayed, women who screamed, women who lost themselves to silence. But Luna was different. Her eyes followed them with eerie calm, as if she knew something they didn't. And perhaps she did. Outside the prison, Will Spencer was trying to rebuild a life that Luna had nearly destroyed. He had found comfort in Electra Forrester, a woman who radiated warmth, stability, and everything Luna never was. Together, they had started to imagine a future untainted by fear. They spoke of marriage, of moving beyond scandal, of raising children of their own someday. But even in their happiness, the shadow of Luna lingered, her trial, her pregnancy, her existence. She was a ghost that refused to die. When Katie and Bill heard about Luna's pregnancy, their reactions were tangled in guilt and compassion. Bill, ever the man of impossible solutions, suggested they adopt the baby once it was born. "That child didn't ask to come into this world under such darkness," he had told Katie. "Maybe we can give it a chance at something better." Katie had hesitated. She saw the logic in Bill's words, but part of her felt the cruelty in it too, to bring the child of her son's trauma into their home. Yet the idea took root in her, quietly, growing alongside her worry that her time might be running out. Perhaps, she thought, this was fate's strange way of giving her another chance to nurture life before her heart gave out. But Luna had other plans. Locked away, she had no control, no audience for her fantasies, no way to rewrite the story that had slipped from her hands. She hated the silence, the sameness of days, the feeling of being forgotten. Each morning, she felt the child move inside her, a tiny flutter of life that filled her with both pride and panic. She called it ours, whispering Will's name over and over like a prayer. Yet behind the devotion lurked desperation. The longer she sat in that cell, the more she believed she was running out of time, not because of the law, but because of her own unraveling mind. When rumors reached her that Bill and Katie were planning to adopt her baby, something inside her snapped. "They think they can steal my child," she hissed, pacing the cell like a caged animal. "They think they can take everything from me." The thought of Katie, the serene, elegant woman with her calm voice and fragile heart, enraged her beyond reason. "She'll never have what's mine," Luna whispered. Not him. Not the baby. Not my life. But as her rage built, so did her delusions. She began to imagine Katie as the real villain, the woman who had manipulated Will, who had convinced him to move on, who had orchestrated everything to keep them apart. The pregnancy became her proof of ownership, her last weapon. And when that weapon started to turn against her, when the doctors began warning her of complications, of the baby's weakening heartbeat, Luna's desperation curdled into madness. By early November, word of Katie's health scare began to spread quietly through Los Angeles. She had collapsed during a meeting at Spencer Publications, clutching her chest as Steffi Forrester rushed to her side. The diagnosis wasn't new, a worsening of her chronic heart condition, but the implications were grim. You've been pushing yourself too hard, the doctor had said. If this continues, you may need another transplant. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Katie tried to be brave, tried to smile for Will's sake, but every night she could feel her pulse falter. Bill refused to leave her side, his eyes heavy with guilt. I can't lose you, he whispered. Not now. Not after everything. At the same time, Luna's body began to betray her. She felt sharp, stabbing pains that made her double over in her cell. The guards brought her to the infirmary, where the prison doctor warned her that the pregnancy was high risk. You need rest, he told her. Stress can trigger premature labor. But rest was impossible for Luna. Her mind was too loud, too filled with imaginary enemies and impossible plans. Then came the night that changed everything. Luna had been talking to her cellmate, a woman serving a life sentence for manslaughter, a brute with hands like stone and eyes that never softened. Luna offered her money, promises of freedom, anything. Hit me, she whispered. Not too hard. Just enough. The woman stared at her, bewildered. You've lost it, she said. But Luna pressed on, her tone feverish. I need to look hurt. I need them to believe I'm suffering. I'll get sympathy. I'll get out. She was trying to stage her own tragedy, to manipulate the system one last time. But control had never been Luna's strength. When the punch came, it wasn't gentle. The sound echoed through the cell block, a dull, sickening thud followed by a cry that silenced even the guards. By the time they reached her, Luna was on the floor, clutching her abdomen, blood pooling beneath her. Her cellmate, pale and trembling, backed into the corner, muttering that she hadn't meant to. Luna's lips moved soundlessly, whispering Will's name, before her eyes rolled back. At the hospital, the news spread fast. Luna Nozawa was in critical condition. The baby was gone. The doctors worked frantically to save her, but the damage was too severe. Her body had been weakened by months of stress, her mind too far gone to fight. And somewhere across town, Katie's heart began to fail again. The scenes unfolded in chilling symmetry, one woman dying of a broken heart, another of her own madness. The doctors spoke in quiet tones, using words like compatible donor, miraculous timing, and experimental transplant. Bill sat between two hospital rooms, torn between horror and hope. Could it be possible that Luna's death, this cruel, senseless end, might save Katie's life? It felt like blasphemy to even think it, but when the cardiologist explained that Luna's heart was a perfect match, Bill went still. Katie's doctors confirmed that without a transplant, she might not make it through the week. Time, they said, was running out. The decision was agony. Katie refused at first. I can't, she whispered. Not her. Not after what she did. But Bill took her hand, his eyes filled with the kind of love that had survived too much to die quietly. You're not taking her life, he said softly. You're giving her death meaning. In the end, fate decided for them. Luna's body gave out before dawn, the monitors flatlining in a sterile crescendo of finality. The doctors moved quickly, efficient and emotionless. By morning, Katie was in surgery. The transplant was a success. Weeks later, as Katie recovered, she often found herself staring out the window of her hospital room, her hand pressed against her chest, feeling the new rhythm beating there. It was stronger, faster, unfamiliar. Sometimes she thought she could feel something else, a flicker of unease, a strange warmth that didn't belong to her. Bill would laugh softly when she mentioned it. "It's just your imagination," he'd say. "Your body's adjusting." But late at night, when the world was quiet, Katie could swear she heard a whisper inside her, faint, fleeting, but unmistakable.
Will.
She told herself it was only a dream, a phantom echo from the heart that once belonged to a woman obsessed. But part of her couldn't shake the feeling that Luna's presence hadn't truly died, that some fragment of her, twisted and yearning, still pulsed within her veins. As Katie regained her strength, the family tried to move forward. Bill threw himself into his work, pouring energy into rebuilding the company and protecting Will, who was still haunted by everything Luna had done. Electra, grieving for the baby she'd once feared and the madness that had stolen so much peace, tried to hold the family together. But under the surface, something in Katie had changed. Her eyes lingered longer when Will entered the room. Her voice, sometimes softer, carried traces of a sadness she couldn't explain. Steffi noticed first. "You're different," she said one afternoon. Katie smiled, brushing it off. "Maybe I'm just grateful to be alive." But gratitude didn't explain the dreams, the flashes of a cell, the smell of bleach, the echo of a woman's scream. It didn't explain the moments when Katie's heartbeat raced for no reason, when she found herself humming a tune she didn't remember knowing. Science would call it cellular memory, the body's way of retaining fragments of its donor's life. But the bold and the beautiful